What's up, everybody? Welcome to GoJo and Golic. Mike Golic Jr. and Mike Golic Sr. here. We got a great show for you guys. As always, make sure you download, subscribe, rate, review us, leave us a 5-star rating, and check us out live Monday through Friday, 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern on the DraftKings Network. Make sure you subscribe to the GoJo and Golic YouTube channel as well as wherever you get your podcast. A couple of housekeeping items. We are obviously not in the normal time or place that you're used to us today here on Tuesday after the Super Bowl. For this week and for this show specifically, this one is going to be more of an actual podcast style here. We had, between our staff having some issues getting home, the flu just running through everybody, including you, Dad, and everything else, a little bit difficult to get everything going this morning. And so we decided to give everyone time to heal, recover, and get home safely and do this in place of that. We will also be off for the rest of this week. So Wednesday, Thursday, Friday of this week, going to give everyone some much-deserved and well-deserved rest coming off a great Super Bowl week. Everyone worked their asses off on our staff and got through it as best they could. But Dad, there's no doubt at the back end, everyone's paying for it. You're finally, I think, coming out of the other side of this flu, it sounds like.
Yeah, I'm definitely coming out of the other side. I'm more alive than I was toward the last 3 days of that trip there. You're right. The behind-the-scenes crew busted their humps, man, getting this show all week in New Orleans. New Orleans was a great host, as usual, tied again with Miami for most Super Bowls. Unfortunately, there was a bit of a sickness, a wave that went through New Orleans there and nailed some of a decent amount of people. It got the old ones. It got me and Wingo. You know, it went after the elderly and knocked us down pretty good. Hammered us pretty good. But you fought through it pretty well. It didn't get you. I was impressed with you. You picked up the slack. But yeah, this was of the 29 or 30 Super Bowls I've went to. There was only one other one. It was in Miami, and I hurt my back. I don't remember how, but I was there for the entire week doing, this is back when NFL Live was NFL Tonight. And I was doing that show and the radio show. I had to sleep on the floor with my legs up on the bed every night while I was there. That's how bad my back was. Oh. Sleep on the floor, on my back with my feet up on the bed for the entire week. It was miserable. That was probably... And that was almost the whole trip. This was a sickness just on the last part of the trip. So, yeah, it was not a great experience then. The end of this one wasn't a great experience for me personally. But, again, I always love New Orleans as a host city.
Well, and what you say it with both of those cities in particular, Dad, everyone assumes like, oh yeah, you got the flu, like the South Beach flu that all the players get when they go in town and go party and then roll into these games hungover as hell. No, this was the actual flu. Radio Row in the Super Bowl is one big petri dish. You're inside a crowded convention center. It's a bunch of artificial air pumped in, and we're all gas bagging. Remember during the pandemic when they used to show those models of the two nameless people talking, and when they're talking, it's showing all like the blue dots spraying out? That's just Radio Row. It's blue dots spraying out in every direction, all over everyone. And so it's no surprise everyone got sick. I think one of our producers got like 3 illnesses at once, got the neurovirus, got COVID, got some stomach virus. It's insane the amount of stuff that everybody managed to get all in 1 week out here. So no, we're not just hungover coming off Super Bowl week, and we're back in hopefully in one piece now as everyone in our crew's back in Boston. Dad and I both made it back home. Dad, I didn't have to sleep on the floor in the New Orleans airport like I did the Atlanta airport leaving the national championship. You were the one that almost got the scare. I thought you were, in the midst of your sickness, going to end up getting screwed over in the airport the way I did.
Yeah, the bar was low for you. Just don't have to sleep on the floor of the airport. As a low bar for you to cross, and you got on your flight pretty much on time. Yeah, I got there. The airport was an absolute mess. They said the last time it was this crowded was the last time the Super Bowl was there. And to get there, listen, they gave us every warning: get there early, get there early. And you talk about the petri dish of the Radio Row, the petri dish of the airport was the same. It was just a mass of humanity. And yeah, my flight left like 2.5 hours late. I thought, you got to be kidding me. It kept doing that delay 20 minutes, delay 20 minutes, delay 20 minutes. I'm like, no. I'm like, don't even tell me. I'm going to have to go back to the hotel. But yeah, got home a little late, but got home and slept in my own bed. So while, again, the Super Bowl trip is great, I wouldn't turn it down for the world. It is always nice to get back home in your own bed.
Exactly. So we're going to let everyone sleep it off the rest of the week. So Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, if you got old ones to catch up on, old GoJo and Golic podcast, some of the great interviews you can check out on the YouTube channel. Do it there, but we will not be here live 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern, Wednesday through Friday on the DraftKings Network or our YouTube channel or the podcast feeds. And again, today, going to look and feel a little different. Thankfully, Dad, we still have plenty to talk about today as we've got some information coming in about the Super Bowl ratings that Fox made sure to get out there very quickly and why you should take it with a grain of salt given some of the changes made here. We're also going to hand out flowers to some of the best performers from the game this weekend and get a little chunky in here as well. There's plenty of good remnants left over from the game. And I said I wasn't going to get mad about a list, but coming up, I'm going to get mad about a list here pretty soon. But before we get to any of that on the football front, Dad, it was amazing how much basketball took over the Super Bowl week at the beginning with the Luka Doncic trade that rocked everyone's world. And boy, last night, we had the best of times and the worst of times, a true tale of two cities going on in the association. As on one side, you had the Los Angeles Lakers getting ready to welcome Luka Doncic in his first game in that Lakers purple and gold at home. 77 Luka Doncic jerseys all over the arena. LeBron James letting Luka Doncic have the spot that's normally his in the introductions. Usually, if you go to a Lakers game, LeBron James is the last guy introduced. He gives Luka Doncic that. They give him the big standing O. He has a great time here, which we'll hear all about. And then, Dad, on the other side, you've got the Dallas Mavericks throwing fans out of their home arena at American Airlines because they're putting up Fire Nico signs, yelling at Mark Cuban and getting fights with him. It is, again, a weekend where it had to be hard in so many ways to be a Dallas area sports fan. Only got worse Monday when you had to hold these two things up next to each other and watch the Lakers have a great time with the guy that was supposed to be yours for a lifetime.
Yeah, and by the way, Anthony Davis is out for about a month with an oblique strain to boot. And Mark Cuban's got to be going, hey, don't look at me. I'm not the majority owner anymore. I don't make decisions, man. Ain't on me. Don't look at me. Look past me. So yeah, it is a mess in Dallas, and it is nothing but flowers in Lakerland. You're right. I mean, LeBron really acquiesced to Luka, as you mentioned, letting them get named last. All the jerseys that the fans had of Luka. Luka had 14 points in 24 minutes. Had a nice alley-oop to Jackson Hayes, the center, off the bat. Hit an early three-pointer. They beat Utah. They're sitting in the fourth slot. And you just wonder how well this machine will be the longer they play together. The only concern is you got to remember that the Mark Williams trade from Charlotte got rescinded because he failed the physical. So, I mean, you have Jackson Hayes as the only center, and he's a guy that for most of the year, obviously, AD was playing in the middle, was averaging in the teens in minutes. Now he's averaging about 25 minutes a game. How much can that hold up? He's a 6-year guy who started his career in New Orleans. So that's going to be an issue for them.
Yeah, you can just already see the writing on the walls because it's one thing to have that in general, but especially in the current Western Conference right now, where you look up and it's Nikola Jokic, it's Gobert in Minnesota, it's Oklahoma City with Chet Holmgren, and it's just all of these bigs staring you down in the Western Conference that make that pretty tenuous. But that being said, Dad, looked comfortable on the offense. Like you said, had the lobs out there. I know defensively there's going to be some questions. Like Utah's a bad basketball team, so this was not going to be the ones to test that group and see defensively, would they be able to hold up? Because with him and Austin Reeves out there on the court at the same time, you have two guys that are not defensive stalwarts by any stretch of the imagination. But it was cool to see him go out and get in the flow of it. He mentioned before LeBron James at the beginning of the game told him, don't try and fit in, fit out, go be great and be you. And Luka Doncic after the game talked about what it was like being out there on the court with LeBron James.
I mean, it's special. I mean, he sees the game in a different way than a lot of people, and his IQ is insane. And just, have two guys like that on court, I think it's going to help the whole team out. The way they received me, everybody, it was amazing to see. I was a little nervous before. I remember when was the last time I was nervous before the game. So But once I stepped on the court, it was fun, and just being out there again felt amazing. The amount of cheering there was in the arena was absolutely unbelievable. So I would say that was my favorite part, and to play again.
So all smiles on that side, Dad, which you would expect to continue, especially as long as Luka stays healthy, which we know has been the issue for this season, dealing with that calf injury that may have slowed him down a bit at times last night, but overall looked pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, and the reason why there's all smiles is right now you have Luka and LeBron playing together. And again, I find it hard to think them making a serious run at the title, but it's going to be a lot of fun to watch those two greats play together. But also, the Lakers see the light at the end of the LeBron tunnel as well. I mean, that's the key here, right? We know LeBron is on his last legs, even though they're great legs right now, but his last legs. But the future is set for the Lakers to build around Luka. Where in Dallas, now you got the fans mad at you. You have the guy that comes over and Anthony Davis out for a month, and you're basically on a 2-year window. I know Nico Harrison said it's like a 3 to 4 year window, but I put it more like at a 2-year window before they need to start thinking about, retooling. So two teams with opposite outlooks.
Certainly. And can I just say the Mavericks in that whole situation right now, organization looks soft the way they're operating. Like, I get there's a bunch of NBA rules on bringing signs into arenas that they can fall back on. But throwing fans out right now because they are understandably upset with you for going and moving on from this player. Like, listen, you made the decision. They've stood 10 toes down on it. Quite honestly, they've continued sort of the public slander against Luka Doncic, Dad. Did you see Patrick Dumont, who is the son-in-law, I believe, of Miriam Adelson, the actual owner that bought the Mavs out from Mark Cuban, but for a lot of reasons, they have him as the principal operating all of this, came out and told the Dallas Morning News, in my mind, the way teams win is by focus, by having the right character, by having the right culture, and then having the right direction to work as hard as possible to create the championship winning outcome. Basically, as they send Luka out to Los Angeles, this, Dad, can only be read as slander of Luka Doncic, right? They're basically posting more of the reasons why they don't think he worked hard enough, was in the right shape while all this is going on. And so if you're going to stand 10 toes down on it the way you go and shout dude down going out the door, the very least you got to do is be able to eat a bit of criticism on the home front. And again, we'll distinguish that from no one should be sending Nico Harrison or anyone involved death threats. That's insane.
Right.
But for fans to go and boo Nico at games and to hold up signs, hey, man, listen, that's the cost of leadership. You're going to have to feel uncomfortable when you make an uncomfortable decision. And now all of a sudden to be tossing your fans out at home while a bunch of others are lighting their season tickets on fire seems a bit soft, even if you've got rules to fall back on.
Yeah, it's a bit of a mess there. And listen, the proof will be in the pudding, right? I mean, they were in the finals. The expectation is to go farther in the next couple of years. So we'll see if that happens. If it doesn't happen, then obviously the criticism will continue, and we'll see how Luka continues to play. I expect Luka to continue to be great. He's freaking 25 years old.
All of the barbs had to hurt. I mean, again, putting these side by side had to hurt. But, Dad, going and seeing Dirk Nowitzki on the courtside to support Luka Doncic while all this is going on, that's a little extra twist of the knife, too, like a real blood's thicker than water situation. Luka and him overlapped for a year. I forget, did they overlap for a year, or was Dirk coming out when he came in?
I think they overlapped, for a year. I think Luka's first year, I believe.
Did you see him hit the Dirk step back, too, while he had him in-house to kind of show a little love? Yeah. Pivoting down there by the baseline and hitting that fadeaway Dirk shot. So all the vibes, great in Los Angeles, horrible in Dallas right now, when, quite honestly, it was supposed to be the inverse in the immediacy. We'll see how it goes on there, but an interesting bow to tie for right now on the situation that got its start during Super Bowl week. Dad, speaking of the Super Bowl here, Fox gets to go ahead and do the thing that every broadcast company dreams of coming off an event like this, which is tout themselves as the new biggest and best. According to Fox Sports, they're projecting a Super Bowl record average audience of 126 million U.S. viewers across TV and streaming for the Eagles' blowout win over Kansas City. The game was televised by Fox Deportes, and Telemundo, and streamed on Tubi, as well as all the NFL's digital platforms. So, Dad, Do you still count this knowing the fact that Nielsen recently changed their ratings where now they are canvassing 100% of the country as opposed to like 66% before that, getting more devices in? Basically, they were taking in more information, and so we got a bigger audience despite the fact that this was a blowout that for most people was marked by Chiefs fatigue. Anything else? Does that still count as the same win in your eyes and for the folks at Fox?
Yeah, it's the first year Nielsen is measuring out-of-home viewers for all states but Hawaii and Alaska. It was previously the top 44 media markets, which covered 65% of the country. So they added more. We obviously have streaming as well. It was Fox, Fox Deportes, Telemundo, streamed on Tubi, as well as the NFL digital platform. So, listen, they get to tout it. I don't personally care. I mean, the numbers, that you can skew numbers any way you want them. The thing that I'll say is it's always the most watch event in the country every year. That's not going to change, or I don't know when that's going to change. Let me put it that way. Anytime they put out the top 100 TV viewerships of the year, at least 80 of them are football games. No matter how you skew the numbers, you can, I'm sure other networks will cry foul, but bottom line is football is still king. You're going to get over 100 million people to watch it, though. 5-6 years ago, there were less than 100 million people. But now the way they rate it and all the streaming services, they're going to add everything. And listen, if I owned a network, I would add everything as well. I would add everything that was associated with my network, I would add to it, and I'd put the number out there. I get it. I mean, I don't blame them for doing it. So it's always going to be one of the most highly watched events.
Yeah, it's the second straight year the Super Bowl hit a record audience. And this, Dad, to me more serves to the point of people that are like, oh, I'm not watching the Super Bowl because it's the Chiefs, or any number of reasons that people concoct. Everyone watches. It is always the event that sits atop of a chart that is full of the top 100 broadcasts being largely NFL games here. That's why owners can make the decisions they do that largely alienate fans and players, that ignore player safety and ignore the fans' wants and needs. Because we all come back to this like moss to the flame. And even this year, Dad, part of me wonders, was this the sicko effect of a bunch of people wanting to see the Chiefs get beat as badly as they did, maybe wanting to stick around and see Kendrick Lamar? However you slice it, that was the only part that surprised me. Was this was in the midst of a massive blowout. This game never felt competitive. I went back and was watching it again last night, and there was never really a point, maybe the Patrick Mahomes of it all had us thinking, hey, down 17 points, they could still come back. In truth be told, was never a competitive football game.
That was, we talked about it yesterday. I mean, that was the turnover and the drive that kind of ended it for me when it was 17-0. Kansas City had the ball deep in their territory, a minute 49 and a half, and I thought if they can go down and score, they start the ball with the ball in the third quarter, maybe they can make it a game. Tooney gets pushed back by Josh Sweat into Mahomes. Bond intercepts it. Now it's 24-0. Game was over. So I believe there was a number of people watching because we know how we are. We love a champion until they're champions too much, and then you want them torn down. You love their climb to the top. You love them to have a short stay at the top, and then you want them off the top. So at least that's how a number of people are. So, yeah, you get people that are rooting against them, and obviously you have a lot of Philly fanatical fans who were just loving what was going on. I'm wondering, was there anything separate for the halftime show of what Kendrick Lamar pulled in? That I don't know. I don't know if they I'm sure they do rate the halftime show, but I didn't see that.
Yeah, no, I am not sure and haven't seen anything in that regard. I'd have to imagine that will reflect to quote Bomani Jones, very to America's outcome, considering how polarizing that seemed to be for all of the obvious reasons that we don't have to get into here. Enjoy it if you enjoyed it. I enjoyed it. I thought it was really done well. I think a lot of people my age and below, certainly more of the demographic for that than some of the people who normally, the general audience, the older audience that watches the Super Bowl that probably felt a little alienated by that. That's okay.
Like I said, I mean, it's not somebody that I have listened to. As I mentioned, it's Eminem and Snoop and Jay-Z. That was more along the lines of a type of music that I listen to. So it wasn't Kendrick Lamar, but I can appreciate good entertainment. I mean, I appreciate that. And from what I understand, his ticket sales went up a good amount of percentage for his concerts after this as well, which is, I mean, there's always the big stink about the entertainers don't get paid in this. Well, I mean, you're not playing on a bigger stage, right? There's no way you're playing on a bigger stage than Super Bowl halftime with the amount of people that are watching.
It is a great advertising arm. That's why a lot of artists will coincide it with an album release or something they want to roll out. I think Rihanna, when she did it, put some Fendi products in there and got to promote her brand even more. And so there's all sorts of reasons like that. You're absolutely right why artists would still seek this out. And there's the cultural cachet of being able to say you performed at the Super Bowl halftime show. For Kendrick Lamar, you get to say you continued to dunk on Drake on the biggest stages known to man. You won 5 Grammys off a diss track, and then you got to play Not Like Us at the Super Bowl and have Serena Williams dancing in the corner on that as well. So there are all of those ancillary reasons for artists like Kendrick that also don't need that particular payday. He's getting plenty of money coming in from other places.
Right. You're absolutely right. He doesn't need the payday, but you don't turn down the publicity. And boy, in the Drake Lamar fight, I mean, it wasn't even a battle. That was a shotgun and a switchblade. I mean, as far as that fight, I mean, that was so Kendrick Lamar. Drake just got housed on, and then on the biggest stage, Lamar continues to do it. It was something, at least from that part of it, of the part of it of their beef that I understood. Boy, was Kendrick a big time winner.
Incredibly accessible beef. That is what we strive for, and that's what Kendrick Lamar gave us on that big stage. So, no, I'm sure more will be said and written about that one, but I think pieces about Super Bowl halftime show are going to be somebody else's business, not going to be our business here. We are going to give flowers to others that were a part of this entire process, though, Dad. So let's go and do that. Let's take a look back at some of the performers here and hand out some flowers here. Great performances from Super Bowl 59, courtesy of Give Them Their Flowers. This Valentine's Day, 1-800-Flowers.com has you covered to give the loved one in your life flowers. Order early and score huge savings like double the roses for free. Act now. Visit 1-800-Flowers.com/GoJo. So, Dad, let's give them their flowers here. As you sit now and have had a couple of days to bask in what happened and what we watched in the Super Bowl, is there anyone in particular that you wanted to give flowers to coming off this weekend and that big win from Philadelphia?
For me, it was Vic Fangio, the D coordinator for the Philadelphia Eagles. Listen, everybody talked about, and rightfully so, Steve Spagnuolo. I mean, Steve Spagnuolo has 4 rings as a D coordinator, the most ever. He was going for ring number 5. He deserves the accolades. But Vic Fangio, who was 0-8 against Mahomes going into this game, just crafted a masterful game plan. Now, the players went out and executed. This game plan would not have been executed if the front 4 or a 4-man rush occasionally, again, we get through the whole blitzing thing of when they brought a linebacker but dropped the D lineman out, you still only had 4 rushers. If they didn't get pressure with 4, they would have had to change up and it may have been a different story. But they got pressure with 4. That was the game plan. That was Vic Fangio's game plan, and it worked. Now, listen, it wasn't just as simple as that. There were other things as well, and the tackling was pure by the Eagles' defense as well. But Vic Fangio, 66 years old, got a chance as a head coach and failed at that. Some guys are just better as D coordinators. Listen, the greatest D coordinator I ever played for, God rest his soul, Bud Carson, told when we were in Philly together, told me, he said, he tried to be a head coach in Cleveland, didn't pan out, and he was just a better coordinator, one of the great coordinators of all time, and that's where Vic Fangio lives. And it was just an incredible game plan. By the way, against a masterful offensive mind in Andy Reid. That's the amazing thing to me, is that was a battle right there.
Yeah, both sides. It was great on great. Like, I think that's, Kellen Moore may be the one that we put a little bit further from that. Younger in his career right now, has had more ups and downs already, was supposed to be that new and next, and then had a couple of years where it all of a sudden didn't look as great. But the other 3 coordinators we're talking about in this game of Spags, Vic Fangio, and Andy Reid, some of the best to ever do it at those spots. So the fact that it was great on great, I'm with you, Dad. the preparation of Philadelphia on defense. Again, when you don't do a ton of things, but you do those few things well, and especially, like, I don't want to get too inside baseball on everybody with some of the stuff like match zone and stuff you hear about with this Eagles team that's kind of a lot of what Nick Saban's Alabama teams would do. It requires an insane level of above-the-neck preparation and communication among players. You have to all be seeing the same things in order to communicate through a lot of what happened. And what you see when you go back and watch Patrick Mahomes in the pocket, in addition to the clear, quick feet that comes with being constantly under duress, is his head whipping around and not finding answers. The Eagles seem to always know where Pat was going to go first and shut that door very quickly. And because the rush was getting home so quick, when that door shuts and he went to see what was behind door number 2, he was already getting punched in the face, bumped, touched, anything to make him uncomfortable in the pocket. And so I just think, again, that level of preparedness, certainly you want to give the players credit, but I'm with you, Dad. Vic had those guys ready to rock. And this was a guy that also, when he got shown the door in Miami, players were openly cheering for him leaving, didn't like the way they were coached down there. This group took his coaching style, internalized it, and the rest was history.
The pressure rate in the Super Bowl for the Eagles was 38% of Patrick Mahomes' dropbacks. It was the 5th highest pressure rate that Mahomes faced in a single in a game in his career. Now, you'd be like, oh, fifth most, so what? That's without a blitz. That is without a blitz. I mean, in more of a blitz-happy league that we have this year, or at least some blitzing, this was with 0 blitzing that they pressured him 38% of the time. I don't know if you lose, Mike. I don't know if you would ever lose a game if you can pressure someone 38% of the time, not blitz, pressure with 4 and have 7 to drop back. I don't see how you would lose a game.
It feels, let's put it this way, I would like to see the list of teams that have lost in those circumstances, because it's got to take some extraordinary act of God level stuff for it to happen, because you're right, that generally tends to be a winning formula. I'll say this, Dad, the other person I would like to give flowers to, and this seems like an obvious thing, but it's Saquon Barkley, because in this game, he was not the star of the show.
Yeah.
And yet he still went out there and was able to be a part of winning football. 11 carries for 70, or excuse me, that was Jalen Hurts. God, Saquon Barkley, 25 carries for 57 yards in this game, averaged 2.3 yards per carry, had 6 catches for 40 yards to go along with it, most notably that one 22-yard catch that he bobbled a little bit that set them up down in the red zone. But, Dad, in general, Saquon Barkley had been the focal point of this offense all year long. And the Kansas City Chiefs knew that. They did a phenomenal job of rallying to tackle Saquon Barkley, being physical around the line of scrimmage on his rush packages, and getting him down on the ground. And so what did Saquon Barkley do? He responded by being the best teammate possible. I think the line, and I forget who to attribute this to, but I'm sorry, but nothing says more about you than the way you block for your teammates. And Saquon Barkley, we saw him on the design runs for Jalen Hurts go out and be a blocker. We saw him on the blitz pickups do a phenomenal job, springing it so that guys like A.J. Brown could get open and get their shine down the field. He was great in chip helping out on some of the great rushers for Kansas City, like Chris Jones on the other side. So I thought, Dad, his selflessness in this game, for a guy that's used to being the star and had been all season, for him to understand what was required of him and still execute that at a high level in this game, says a lot about his character as a football player.
Guy who did stats so well at ESPN when I was there, and still does it. Not at ESPN now, but still does stats. Russell Baxter always talked about it's not so much the yards in the rushing, but it's a number of rushes where you're controlling the ball. And he ran the ball, as you mentioned, 25 times. And so there was still that threat of him running the ball, and still that threat of him breaking one. And and his longest run was 10 yards, so he never broke one like he was going to. But there was always that threat there, which helped the pass. By the way, he was a leading receiver in catches with 6, not in yards, but in catches. He had 6. Devontae Smith led with 69 yards on 4 catches. But yeah, it was a team play. He's a team player, and that's what a lot of these guys are. That's why they had the best team, the best roster out there. These guys play for one another, and they play well.
It's so true. It's the story of the Eagles offense, because defensively they were so dominant in this game. You know, Milton Williams, we already talked about Josh Sweat had monster games statistically that you can point back to there. But offensively, you're right. No one, and a lot of this is field position too, coming off turnovers and getting the ball in the spots that they did. You're not going to rack up massive yard totals, but like Jalen Hurts, so decisive in this game as a scrambler and getting out of the pockets at the right time compared to his counterpart and Patrick Mahomes, who looked rattled. Jalen never looked rattled in any of those moments. You talk about a guy statistically not dominant in this game. A.J. Brown, 3 catches for 43 yards. Had a couple of big plays, including a touchdown in this game, but by and large, was there when they needed a blitz beater, someone to make a big play downfield in the critical moment. Had to shake off the frustration after the miscommunication between him and Jalen Hurts. But Dad, A.J. Brown this season felt like one of the most underrated receivers in the NFL because he wasn't used often. But you talked about with Saquon, the threat, the gravity of A.J. Brown and the knowledge you can always break glass in case of emergency for a guy that physically gifted, going good on good against Trent McDuffie, to me, is just another example, another guy who probably deserves flowers coming off this performance, because it's hard to go out there and be at your best when you're not able to get into that rhythm all the time, and he still manages to do it when called on.
Yeah, he does. And it's always good to have a guy that when you see you have a one-on-one, you just look, you just point, you just know, hey, I'm going for the 50-50 ball here, which is normally going to be 70-30 in our favor.
Yeah, I think I heard Mina Kimes, her and I were talking about offseason needs on her podcast, The Mina Kimes Show, and referenced a couple of times a bucket getter, like a receiver that you know you can just go to. T. Higgins this offseason is going to be the belle of the ball in terms of bucket getters available on the open market. And A.J. Brown, to me, is one of the ultimate examples of that. He might not be the best. Like Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson probably vie for that title. Right. But, man, there are few guys as physically gifted, as willing to go over the middle, and as contested catch savvy as A.J. Brown in those spots. So congratulations to him. Those flowers handed out to some guys that we thought deserved them coming off this weekend. But, Dad, let's talk about a little beef right now here. We can't give out flowers to these guys here, so let's give out some soup now. It's the Campbell's Chunky Offensive Lineman of the Week. It is presented by Campbell's Chunky, the soup that eats like a meal. And it's hard not to give that nod to the group that helped pave the way up front for the Eagles in this Super Bowl. So we'll recognize, once again, it feels like we should have renamed this the Campbell's Chunky Philadelphia Eagles Offensive Line Performance of the Week. We ended up doing them so many times in the lead up. But they got this done in a different way than most expected, since Saquon Barkley was held to only 57 yards. And so, Dad, their focus as pass protectors in this game really exemplary here. Obviously, Jalen Hurts set a quarterback record of rushing yards in a Super Bowl with 72 yards in this game, but the Chiefs only managed pressure 3 times on 12 blitzes in this game. That was their 3rd lowest mark in a game all season. So this group up front was prepared for the challenge that Spags was going to throw them on the other side.
And the expectation was the other way, right? It was them as a running O-line, averaging 6'6", 338 pounds. We had talked about that, and the fact that they had given up 45 sacks during the regular season. So they had given up some sacks. So now it kind of switched. The run blocking was tough because Kansas City was going to say Saquon Barkley is not going to beat us. And while he was certainly part of the game plan that did beat them, he didn't get his normal 100 and some yards. And it was the passing attack for Philly. Now just 17 completions on 22 attempts, but Jalen Hurts running as well. And as you mentioned, he was just sacked twice. And the blitz pickup, including Saquon in that, was excellent blocking by this offensive line. So something that, again, it was kind of the reverse of the regular season of what they had done well. Bottom line is, they were prepared. And I wonder, do you think deep down Jason Kelce wishes he played another year?
It had to be tough in a lot of ways. I saw Jason just put out a long tweet talking about his feelings on the situation, more in reference to Travis and the tension between, the city. And he pointed out, I know we had this conversation a bit about Jason's rooting interest, knowing that he had blood on one side. But as he said, there are guys in that Philadelphia locker room, Lane Johnson and company, that are like brothers to Jason Kelce at this point, that you go through so much as teammates for so long, especially in the trenches like that, and you're going to have a love that feels familial with those guys. And so I understood the tension there, but I'm with you, knowing it was a rematch of a game that he lost on that big stage most recently, knowing that this was a decision and a tough one he wrestled with, even with all the success he's had this season, a late night show, part of Countdown on ESPN, the podcast is doing monster numbers. you know how that guy's wired as a competitor. And so it's not to say that he has regrets, because I'm sure for him in a family sense, as that family continues to grow, being around them more often. But we know the competitor that guy is. I'm sure there's a part of him that felt that pang of, again, it's not regret or jealousy, but it's probably just a little bit of angst of knowing he could have been a part of another one of the ultimate team spectacles. And with how much team means to that guy, I'm sure that was a difficult feeling to wrestle with.
And I'm sure while others thought that maybe as well, a guy that, let's be honest, was kind of happy he didn't come back was Cam Jurgens, because Cam Jurgens got to be the starter. Cam Jurgens was a Pro Bowler as well. I mean, he stepped in and did a phenomenal job as well, running that offensive line.
And he's going to get a payday now. Like, his contract is the one that comes up most. Well, Mekhi Becton is a free agent now who, you know, I'll be interested to see what happens with him and what he values. Jeff Stoutland really helped revitalize his career at guard. And so if he wanted to go in and cash out on that, especially now that he has the ring with him, would totally understand that. But Cam Jurgens is signed through 2025. And as one of their homegrown guys, I'd imagine the priority is going to be to keep him around, continue to have him as the center there. Everyone else, Jordan Mailata signed through 2028. Landon Dickerson signed through 2028. Lane Johnson signed through 2026. And you wonder for him if more of the conversation will be about, you know, you could say eventual retirement, but the guy's still playing like one of the best, if not the best tackles in the NFL. So it seems like he's got plenty of gas left in the tank.
Yep. I agree. So listen, we know no team comes back exactly the same. I think except for when Tampa Bay won the Super Bowl, I think they actually brought back all 22 starters, which was wild. But there's going to be changes on this team. You mentioned who free agents are. Josh Sweat's a free agent on the defensive side as well. No team comes back exactly the same. They have others on the defense that potentially could move. So, it's up to Howie Roseman to start it out and then the coaching staff to shine it up.
Yeah, you mentioned Josh Sweat going to be a free agent. Zach Bond, probably the biggest one that they're going to work to re-sign there, you'd imagine, given his outsized importance to that defense as a Defensive Player of the Year finalist there. Milton Williams going to get paid by somebody. They're probably not going to be able to have him, although Moro Ojomo looked great at times during this game on D-line for them. Like, they've shown an aptitude for that position group, so I don't worry as much about that. But no doubt they're going to look different. But, man, how they're built in the important places and the way they've hit on so many young pieces does seem to be consistent throughout. So, again, congrats to this Eagles offensive line who does all this. And this is, again, maybe inside baseball point here. Dad, they do all of this out of 2-point stances. Like all the stuff we've talked about all year long with them carving out space in the run game. I cannot stress to people how difficult it is to generate the kind of power, push, and performance that they do, standing there in a 2-point stance and not being able to get any of that lean forward. Dad, usually that's for teams that are drop back passing outfits that are going to go and be 5 wide and 4 wide more and try and spread the ball around here. Not a team that's hallmark is getting downhill and getting dirty. So that, to me, on top of everything else, and you could speak to that as someone on the other side, that's usually a leverage win for the defensive line, and the Eagles never gave that up.
Well, I guess that's where the size comes into play, right? When you're average 6'6", 338 pounds, even though you're in a 2-point stance, you're still coming off like a hammer. Because you're right. Normally you would think the defensive player is going to win the leverage game because he's coming out of a stance and going to be a little lower, but that's probably where their size helps them.
Yeah, massive across the board outside of Cam Jurgens, who has to walk into that huddle sometimes and feel very safe. Being a center is great because you're already safe and protected. Like the when we had Joe Thomas on and he talked about the difference of playing tackle and guard, and he said guards like bowling with bumpers and tackles like having to go out there with a free lane. Playing centers like having the bumpers. And then have you ever seen that little bowling thing they put out for kids where you just roll the ball down? This is no disrespect to Cam Jurgens. This is someone who played center saying this. You feel so safe in there because you've got so many layers around you to help, so many guys in there. You're almost never soloed up in protection, though Cam Jurgens did a great job in the reps where he was. And so walking into that huddle, knowing not only are you in the middle of all that, but that you've got grade A top choice beef everywhere you turn, including arguably the 2 biggest guys in Landon Dickerson and Mekhi Becton right next to you. That's good work if you can get it. Great way to get that big, by the way, is to eat up like we did when we were in New Orleans. Dear God in heaven, I am going to sweat meat sweats, and I guess seafood sweats too, since so much of it is fried seafood and all these different ways they prepare it, for weeks coming off it. So why don't we get to, and we've been doing our Tums food polls on here for a while throughout the playoffs, and so DraftKings and Tums have presented a number of pools to find out everyone's favorite food in a number of different categories and calorie counts. And this week, in honor of the Super Bowl in New Orleans, they wanted to take a look at New Orleans-themed food. So we're going to bring you guys the results here presented by Tums. Whenever heartburn strikes, get fast relief with Tums. It's time to love food back again. I'm a little stunned by some of this, Dad, but I'll go through the winners in each category. It should be noted as we do drink, appetizer, side, dessert, sandwich, and main dish. The drink is the non-alcoholic edition and the non-brand affiliated division. So soda winning in that category seems like by default here. Other ones, iced tea, seltzer, coffee, water, and juice. Appetizer, shrimp cocktail won. Side, red beans and rice won. Dessert, beignet. The sandwich, fried chicken sandwich. And the main dish, barbecued chicken, Dad. Probably the biggest surprise to me on this list. What stuck out to you?
I'm surprised at that as well. As far as appetizer, I'd have gone with the lump crab cocktail over the shrimp cocktail. The side, I would consider, like when I got a po' boy, on the side came jambalaya. So I would put jambalaya as a side if I were asked that.
They
Dessert
had jambalaya
beignet
for
sure.
what it's worth.
Thing,
so again, in the side dishes, they had red beans and rice, cornbread, cheddar corn biscuits, Cajun potato salad, collard greens, and grits. Those were the side dishes there. Jambalaya was one of the main dishes, along with fried seafood platter, gumbo, shrimp creole, and crawfish.
Okay, all right. So then I would have. For the side, I would have gone with the Cajun potato salad. And the beignet, to me,
you don't like red
it's
beans
always
and
a
rice?
toss-up with Yeah. I'm not a big bean person. I'm not as big a bean person.
Oh.
I know.
Man.
I know.
Me and beans are like this. You throw a little andouille sausage in there, too, and now you're really cooking with gas.
Yeah. As far as desserts, I'd split the difference between beignets and king cakes. Sandwich... Boy, I had a great fried chicken sandwich, and I had a great blackened redfish po' boy. So, boy, I mean,
I'm surprised that the New Orleans affinity on Bourbon Street, like when you go down there, it's, it's hurricanes and hand grenades all over the place, and it's fried chicken joints because that's what drunk people like. And so I don't know if this is skewed by out-of-towners coming in, but there are also like Willie Mae's Scotch House and a bunch of places that do really, I think Willie Mae's Scotch House does the good fried chicken. There's also just, I think, a Willie's fried chicken out there too. But they do fried chicken sandwiches very well. I mean, the place that we went to, Sylvain, as a part of our Tums tour, also did a great job of a fried chicken sandwich there. But I'm with you, Dad. I was surprised that beat out the shrimp po' boy that seems to be the one most people think of.
Yeah.
I've got a bunch of muffalata bread also in my pantry right now from Cochon. So all that stuff's awesome. But I was surprised the po' boy got beat out like that.
Yeah, and I'm barbecue chicken for the main. Boy, I'd probably lean there. I would lean toward the jambalaya. Shrimp Creole, I love as well. But, I was surprised barbecue chicken won that.
Yeah, that one, the biggest shocker to me, was the main. Everything else I could understand. Beignets are synonymous. The fried chicken sandwich I could even get down with. But the barbecued chicken winning out, again, all politics are local, so maybe there's a thing I'm missing down there as a tourist who just parachutes in for big events. But either way, thank you to everyone who voted and participated in that food poll there. And obviously, thank you to the folks at Tums who saved my life during Super Bowl week. That is not an exaggeration down there. Dad, we need to save lives and get the PSA out right now because from food to a frenzy, the parade got announced for the Philadelphia Eagles championship.
Yeah.
That's going to take place on Valentine's Day. So the city of brotherly love gets to wrap their loving arms around each other on Valentine's Day. And this announcement came out from the Philadelphia government Twitter account. Said the city can confirm the Eagles celebration will be on Friday, February 14th. Together with the Eagles, we'll reveal more details soon. Dad, we just hope everyone's safe. Between the greased poles, the people eating poop last time, we know this city loves a good party. We know this city loves the Eagles team. Last time on Dragon Ball Z, you had Jason Kelsey in the Mummers outfit deliver one of the more memorable speeches of all time. Chris Long was wearing furs. It was all great. Just be safe and take care of each other out there, Philadelphia. That's all we ask.
Yeah, I mean, you just hope that it is on Valentine's Day, and maybe love being in the air will soften the blow for everybody and not to be as crazy, right? Maybe it'll be a more mellow parade. I'm begging here because I want everybody to be safe, because I have a feeling it's going to be crazy. I mean, that's a crazy city. It's a fans that love their teams, and they're fans that celebrate, sometimes crossing the line a little bit. So I hope maybe Valentine's Day maybe calms some people down.
It shouldn't. Usually, like a team winning a championship, you talk to people in a lot of these cities, and they'll be like, crime goes down after this. Everyone's in a better mood overall. The championship glow for any city is always pretty remarkable. But for Philadelphia, a city that, especially with this Eagles team, has such a great bond here. Looking forward to seeing the sights and sounds of that. It's always my favorite thing, because for some people, I understand overindulging on booze is something people don't want to endorse. Man, if there's a time to do it, the images of all these guys reduced to college frat stars up there on the bus chugging beers is one of my favorite images every postseason. So I'm looking forward to that one.
Yeah, that and how about the last image of Tom Brady after he won the Super Bowl in Tampa Bay, how hammered he was. I mean, oh my God. It reduces them to a human level, that's for sure.
I mean, we already saw SAQUON Barkley shotgunning beers in the locker room on his birthday after, so I feel like this Eagles team is going to have something in the tank for this parade that we can look forward to. We have got one more thing in the tank for you guys here. As always, a reminder to download, subscribe, rate, and review the show. Leave us that 5-star rating wherever you listen to your podcast, and check us out Monday through Friday, 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern on the DraftKings Network, our YouTube channel as well, GoJo and Golic, that you can subscribe to. Again, as a reminder, we're not going to be around Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday of this week post-Super Bowl, a much-earned and much-deserved break for everyone involved in our staff here. But before we go, Dad, it's time to Cash It or Trash It, presented by DraftKings. The crown is yours. For Cash It or Trash It this week, we're going to check out some NFL future bets now available on the DraftKings Sportsbook, starting with the Super Bowl favorite for next year. Dad, no surprise here. The Philadelphia Eagles, plus 600 right now, is the odds-on favorites to win Super Bowl 60 next season, followed by a tie of the Chiefs, Bills, and Ravens at plus 700, and then the Lions at plus 900. Any surprise to you in the way that's ordered on this list, Dad?
No, not at all. But there's always going to be that team that you don't think about. That's always the fun one to pick, is the team that's lower on the list that makes the jump. But no, nothing surprising there. The Eagles deserve to be the favorites coming back next year. Chiefs, we still give the Chiefs their love, even though they got smoked in this Super Bowl, because they have been back there so many times. And the Bills and Ravens still trying to knock the Chiefs out to find their spot in the Super Bowl. And as long as they have Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen, they're going to have a chance, because those two are going to be, normally 1-2 for MVP voting anyway.
This order, not surprising. The order I saw, and God, I know how lists on the internet are supposed to work. It is designed to make me mad. But my brothers and sisters in Christ over at the ESPN NFL Nation that put together their early power ranking, of the NFL teams going into next year, have the Eagles checking in at number 4. How, Sway? How? This has to just be to rile folks up. They have Kansas City at number 1, Buffalo at 2, Detroit at 3, and Philadelphia at 4, rounding it out with Baltimore at number 5. Dad, we can agree those probably the top 5 teams, but how you look at what the Eagles just did to Kansas City and know who both teams have coming up and coming back next season and say, oh yeah, that's the number 1 team by 3 spots, blew my mind. I didn't want to get mad. I told myself I wasn't going to get mad, but damn it, I'm a little pissed off by this.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how Philly can't be number 1. They're going to have the best roster again coming back, save from if they lose every free agent they have, which I don't think they will, but they'll lose some. But they have the best overall roster because, quite honestly, they've picked up key free agents and had great drafts the last 4 drafts. So they're still young players. And you're right. Those are the 5 teams that are going to be mentioned all the time coming back, deservedly so, then followed by, a combination of Washington, Green Bay, the Chargers, the Bengals, if they can, revamp that defense. But the top 5 that you mentioned in both these lists are pretty much going to be the top 5. But I'm with you. Philadelphia at 4. I mean, that's crazy. But again, it's meaningless. It means nothing. Just drives you nuts.
I know that's what it's designed to do, and I hate that it still happens. So shout out to the algorithm for the win there. Dad, how about this one? Saquon Barkley rushing total for next season. Over under 1,500.5 yards in 2025. That juice to -110 for the over and for yes. This season, he obviously became the 9th NFL rusher in league history to rush for over 2,000 yards. His previous career high had been 1,300 yards. Dad, I know this is caked in recency bias, but man, 1,500 yards for Saquon behind that offensive line and with that guy in the backfield at quarterback, especially given how healthy and spry Jalen Hurts looked in the Super Bowl. Like when he is that dynamic in the backfield, 1,500 yards with this group seems like Saquon's birthright until further notice.
I would easily smash the button on the over on that. He had a career high by, I think, 50 carries. In carries, he had 345 carries. A couple of years ago, his second to last year in New York, he had 295 carries. So again, he had a large number of carries, but he certainly can foot that load, no doubt about it. So yeah, I think, quite honestly, I can see that's why it's -110. I think that's an easy over.
Yeah, the future number 1 overall pick in every fantasy football draft known to mankind next year. It's all coming up Saquon this offseason. No doubt. Let's finish off, Dad. NFL MVP odds for next season. Lamar Jackson, currently the favorite at +500, followed by this year's MVP, Josh Allen. So the last 2 MVPs, unsurprisingly, at the top of this list. And then you get to Mahomes and Burrow at +750, Jaden Daniels at +1,000, Jalen Hurts, tied for 8th at +2,500, along with C.J. Stroud, Baker Mayfield, and Kyler Murray. You surprised he's that low on the list coming off a Super Bowl MVP?
No, because you sit there and you look at, like, again, remember it's a regular season award, and he threw for under 3,000 yards. He just threw for 18 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. He didn't put up like monster numbers. And that's for a quarterback, that's something that you're looking for, is bigger numbers. And Lamar throws in the rushing yards as well. So I can see Jalen down, tied for 8th. To me, the guy I would probably lay money on is because you got to believe that defense is going to get better because they're going to spend to get it better. They brought in Al Golden, even though I think Al can help, obviously, from Notre Dame going to Cincinnati as a D coordinator. That Joe Burrow, I think, because we know the numbers he put on the offensive side, but the team needs to be better as well. So I'm not surprised Jalen is down that low, and my early bet would be Joe Burrow.
Yeah, that was where my eyes went to here. Jaden Daniels is enticing, but it's also, hey, we thought this about C.J. Stroud last year, and we know how much things can change. Joe Burrow, the safer stock to back, because we've watched him do this the majority of his NFL career, and last year in more adverse circumstances than maybe ever before. Amazing. Saquon Barkley, Dad, has longer odds than Drake May right now, telling you the power of the quarterback position. As we look at non-quarterbacks involved in it, he's the first non-quarterback on the board to be mentioned at +5,000. He's below Drake May, Trevor Lawrence, and tied with Aaron Rodgers for MVP odds next season. The disrespect palpable for a guy that was 3rd in the MVP voting this year.
That's just amazing. Like I said, he would have had to break the record to even have a chance to win that thing. And to think he's going to get there again would be a stretch. Not out of the realm, but still a bit of a stretch.
I guess you're right to that point. Like, it shouldn't be the disrespect that's palpable, but it's more how difficult it is for a non-quarterback in this day and age to win the award. The guy was on the cusp of an all-time record and still finished 3rd and got 0 or 1 first place vote when it came up to him against the quarterback. So that reflected in the odds here as we already look ahead at next season and get a little bit fired up here. So again, it's kind of a bow on the NFL season. Now we'll have the combine coming up here shortly. We're going to get ready to meet the newest crop of draft prospects. My dad is going to get frustrated at the number of guys in shorts that go and seemingly improve their draft stock each and every week. So much with the NBA regular season getting ready to wind down here as well. Pitchers and catchers reporting soon. All stuff coming up on the other side of this. But again, thank you to everybody who tuned in all football season for everything that we had going on here. Everybody who downloaded, subscribed, rated, and reviewed, and checked out our Super Bowl week content here. We're going to enjoy the back half of this week. You do the same. Thank you guys so much. We'll talk to you next Monday.